The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, May 13th. Hope everybody has had a great weekend and you're looking forward to a fantastic week. All right, let us jump in. We're going to do the news today. We got about an hour, so it'll fly by. I have a hard stop at 3, so it will literally be an hour. I'll remind you that this evening, 7 p.m. East Coast time, I'll be interviewing Brian Kaplan. We'll be talking about mainly his new book on building, on Build, Baby Build. But we will also be talking about his previous book on immigration, maybe on why he doesn't consider himself an Austrian economist, what's his beef with Austrian economics. And so we'll be talking about those issues. Please come, ask questions. Let's, just between us, let's leave the anarchy questions aside. I've done that debate with him, but let's focus on these economic questions where we have more agreement, and which I think is interesting, and where I think he's a really interesting thinker. So please join us for that. When is that? Tonight, 7 p.m. East Coast time. Brian Kaplan, economist from George Mason University, just wrote a book called Build, Baby Build, and we're going to be talking about that. And he also wrote a book previously about immigration, which open immigration, which I thought was excellent. So we can talk about that one as well. So bring your immigration, building, city planning questions. Bring all those questions for tonight. It should be fun. He's articulate and smart, and it should be interesting. Let's see. One of the few other announcement, and we'll get back to this. There's a new book out. It's Why Act on Principle by Leonard Peikoff. So it's essays of Leonard Peikoff's. It has as the lead essay, what you think of principle, maybe you're wrong, an exercise in philosophical detention, philosophy and psychology and history, and a bunch of others. So highly recommend Why Act on Principle. It's a really important book. I think Why We Should Act on Principle is one of the best essays in objectivism ever. So please go out and get it. It's on Amazon. It's available with a very short foreword by yours truly. Let's see. That's one. Right after OCON, at the end of OCON, the day after OCON, I'm doing a public speaking seminar. You can sign up for that if you're interested. On my website, on yaronbrookshow.com, there is a tab that has a workshop. If you press on the workshop link, there is an opportunity there with information about the exact date. It's June 19th from 10 to 5. The price, which is $1,000 for the day, and an opportunity to pay. So you can take a communication seminar, public speaking seminar with me in Anaheim, or Santa Ana in this case, on June 19th, full day. So please, those of you interested, sign up. Now I'll only be taking a small number of people. That'll be 10. I've got 3 signed up already, so I'm looking for 7 more people to sign up to do this. So sign up quickly because the space could go pretty fast. And finally, for my course at the Peterson Academy on finance, I'll be doing that course in 2 weeks from today. They like a live audience, and you can sign up for a live audience. So let me know if you'd like to participate in that. I'm not sure where you can. I can send you the link of where to sign up for that if you'd like. And but let me know if you'd like to do that. And then let's see. There was one other thing. Finally, I did want to remind everybody that if you're interested in a ad-free podcast, not on YouTube, but ad-free podcast, then you can go to Yaron Brook Show Again, .com, and click on the tab called Support Club. And if you sign up for the Support Club and you download the Spreaker app for $10 a month, you can get a ad-free podcast. Every show will be up there, and you'll be able to listen to it ad-free. So quick announcements, but please consider doing all that. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Jack, for the stickers. Really appreciate that. Let's jump into the news. It seems like if you want to see a dying industry, and there's a respect in which if you want to see a dying country, then look at what industries the government is trying to protect. And, a dying country is a country that needs to protect its industries, particularly if those industries are cutting edge and at the forefront of technological advance. There's something very wrong. There's something dying. There's something, definitely a defeatism in saying we can't compete with the rest of the world, even though we're an advanced economy. So we're going to build big walls around the country. I think that's true of immigration, but that's even more true of industry and economic activity. We're going to build big walls around it to protect our local industries, particularly when this has nothing to do by any stretch of the imagination with, let's say, national security, real national security, not pretend, make-believe national security. And that's what's happening clearly right now in the United States with the whole field of electric vehicles. Biden will announce, I think today or tomorrow, the day after, one of these days soon, Biden is going to announce 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. He will announce significant increasing tariffs on batteries and on a bunch of minerals that are used in order to facilitate electric vehicles. He'll also probably announce, I'm kidding, but not really. He'll probably also announce that at the same time, he is not going to allow us to mine for those minerals in the United States because of a variety of different environmental concerns. So no mining for the minerals that we're going to put a big tariff on to prevent them from coming in from China. I'm not sure where we're going to get them from. And certainly we don't want to become self-sufficient in it. The reality is, there are multiple realities. One is 100% tariff on automobiles imported from China. Does anybody know how many electric vehicles were imported this year from China, last year from China? The number is exactly zero. But the reality is that China builds better electric cars and dramatically cheaper electric cars than the United States. I'll say that again. It builds cheaper and better. You can pretend Chinese electric cars are garbage, but there's no evidence of that. Chinese electric cars are about as good as anybody's, including Tesla. And they sell for about half or a third in some cases. And Chinese companies are making a profit. Now, you could compete, you could try to, or you could fold, which is probably what we should do, or you could keep throwing valuable capital, valuable resources, valuable money after, a dying industry. The United States automobile industry basically died in the early 1980s when Chrysler, came close to going bankrupt and was bailed out by the I was going to say Biden administration, but of course it wasn't the Biden administration. It was the Ronald Reagan administration that bailed out Chrysler. It then kind of recovered. It recovered because of minivans and then SUVs. Americans are very good at building big cars and very, very bad at building bad cars. At building small cars, sorry. Bad cars. They built plenty of bad cars. Small cars. Then they died again during the great financial crisis. And this time Obama bailed them out. And they are about to die because they can't compete in the electric vehicle market at the same time as the same government trying to bail them out is mandating electric vehicles. I mean, there's a challenge for you. We want to bail out our car companies, but our car companies cannot build EVs, but we want EVs, so we're going to, I don't know, I'll just let my head explode and move on. Imagine if we'd let Chrysler go bankrupt in 1980. Maybe the auto companies would have learned a lesson. Oh, and by the way, at the same time, maybe eliminated some of the regulations that made it so much more profitable to build SUVs and not small cars. Maybe all kinds of weight regulations, all kinds of regulations that are pretty dumb. But imagine if we'd let Chrysler go under and those resources are being deployed elsewhere. Imagine, and I know this is horrific, if we'd let Chrysler, if we'd let GM and Ford shrink dramatically and only make the cars that are profitable. Now, for a variety of regulatory reasons they're not allowed to, they have to make small cars by regulation. But let's assume those regulations went away. Imagine how much richer we would be driving our Korean, Japanese, potentially Chinese cars, and investing all those resources in the latest, greatest, whatever technologies that we can't even imagine, because all the capital was wasted, thrown down the toilet in bailing out all these other companies. Right? So, yes. And by the way, the government bails companies out all the time, and then loans are paid back to pay back the government, and everybody says, see, bailout worked. This is why I hate, one of the many reasons I hate bailouts. Banks, you remember the $700 billion bailout of the banks in 2008? Every dollar, every dime was paid back with interest. The government made money off of that bailout. And what lesson does the government learn from that? Oh, yeah, this is great. We should play at central planning. We should invest taxpayer money in companies because we're really good at it. We get all our money back plus interest. The problem is not that the money doesn't come back. The problem is the industrial planning that this implicitly invokes. The fact that we're not letting the markets clear. The fact that we're not penalizing failure. The fact that we're not letting them go under. They need to go under. They need to fail. By the way, when they fail, they restructure. They don't disappear. And that restructuring is helpful, but they restructure to be profitable. American auto companies today, if we insist on EV mandates, probably need to go under. They won't survive. I mean, the amazing EVs, none of them are coming from the US except with Tesla. And we haven't yet started importing Chinese EVs. Even at 100% tariff, they would be cheaper than what Detroit makes. And just as good, if not better. So the tariff is just another bailout that you will pay for because you will have to pay a lot of money for expensive automobiles. And more importantly, it is a sign. It is a sign from the heavens. No, it is a sign from the White House that we can't compete anymore. That we're pathetic, useless, and instead of competing with the Chinese, we're just gonna leave the field. Chinese central planning better than American mixed economy. By the way, you should check out the Seagull. The Seagull is a $12,000, whoops, that is the sound of a seagull. $12,000 electric car made by BYD in China that drives well, put together with real craftsmanship, rivals any US-made electric car, including a Tesla, and costs $12,000. $12,000. It's time America stopped making cars. It's time we let the market work. Maybe American car manufacturers can keep making big SUVs, but it's time they stop making small cars, and it's time we let them. It needs to fail. And, if we don't want the cars to come all the way from China, I'm sure Mexico would be happy to make EVs for us, and we can rely on that. You either believe in competitive markets or you don't. And there's nothing unique about automobiles that says they have to be made in America. German cars, great. I'd much rather drive a German car than an American car. Much rather drive a Japanese car than an American car. Most of us would. Then why are we insisting on using our tax money to bail out Detroit? Companies that are not efficient, not effective, and which the unions, because of all these bailouts, are milking for every last dime. I think knowing that they better milk them for everything they can now, because in the future these companies won't exist, so get as much as you can right now. All right. Tariffs. One thing we can count on, no matter who wins the next election, is there going to be a lot more of them. And that just means your costs are going to increase. American companies are going to be less competitive. And, we're going to continue. We're going to intensify the economic stagnation that now seems to be fated for this country, because we now live in a world where both political parties agree on one thing, and that is that Americans should not be allowed to compete on the world stage. Government should be there to protect us at every corner. Government should be there to protect our fragile industries, our fragile businesses from competition from other countries, and make sure that Americans win big. And again, doesn't matter, Democrats, Republicans. It's all the same: big government, big intervention, industrial planning BS. All right. By the way, as an aside, it is a news item, but as an aside, you guys might enjoy watching. It's on YouTube. Seinfeld, the comedian, Seinfeld's commencement address that he just gave at Duke University. It has some really good stuff in it. It has a lot of funny stuff in it, but it has some really good stuff in it about life and about love and about work. If only people took Seinfeld's advice, the world in which we live would be a far better world. Clay, thank you. We could integrate Seinfeld's advice with Yaron's rules for life. Some of it's really good. So encourage you. It'll make you smile. It'll be a feel-good kind of thing. Some good news for a change. Why not? All right. Quickly on the what's going on, continues to go on in Israel. Israel basically is fighting right now within Gaza at 3 different fronts. In the south, kind of in two different significant neighborhoods. In the north of Gaza, every time Israel seems to leave a particular area, Hamas reestablishes itself there. Israel has to go in and kill a bunch of them. Part of the benefit, part of what this does, Hamas has finite number of troops. So over time, that will dwindle the number of troops and destroy the number of troops that Hamas has. And ultimately, it's a strategy will actually destroy Hamas. It's poke-a-mole, but the reality is there are only so many moles. The moles can't multiply and don't multiply. Israel continues to do that. Israel is going into Rafah in spite of the Biden administration's continuous threats to stop them. Biden has basically joined the Columbia University students in his anti-Israel advocacy and his commitment to supporting Hamas. The reality is that if you're telling Israel you can't go into Rafah, you're telling Israel you cannot win. You must not win. You must let Hamas survive. That is basically defeat. Anything less than the destruction of Hamas is defeat for Israel. Biden now has tilted completely to the side of the Biden administration generally, is completely tilted to the side of Hamas and away from Israel. Egypt, by the way, just to fill you in on a bunch of stuff going on, Egypt, by the way, now refuses to coordinate with Israel. Israel now supports, controls the entrance from Egypt into Gaza. Egypt is refusing to coordinate entry of aid through that avenue. That was the avenue that provided most of the humanitarian aid into Gaza, because it refuses to cooperate to sanction Israel's control over the border crossing. And by, to hell with the Palestinians if they all die. Egypt is so afraid, and this is the consequence of what Biden's doing. Egypt is so afraid of being associated in some way or another with Israel that it is willing to just not supply humanitarian aid, not to be in cahoots with Israel. At the same time, it's also joined South Africa in the International Court of Justice in their suit against Israel, claiming Israel's committing genocide. So Egypt has joined that. So much for the wonderful, peaceful relationship between Israel and Egypt. But you see, once Biden goes anti-Israel, everybody feels like they can go anti-Israel. This is now a field day for all the anti-Israelis. The United States announced, this is like one of the more bizarre stories I've seen. The United States announced that if Israel doesn't go into Rafah, if Israel doesn't expand the operation into Rafah, then the United States will provide Israel with intelligence on where the Hamas leadership actually is, and it will provide Israel with intelligence on where the tunnels are. Now, this is truly unbelievable. The reality is that if America has such intelligence and it hasn't shared it with Israel, then is it an ally at all? Imagine if Israel had intelligence about a major attack on the United States by a terrorist group and it refused or didn't share it and said to the Americans, you know what, if you provide us with X weapons, then we'll share the intelligence with you. Otherwise, fine, a bunch of Americans will die. The United States has intelligence on where Sinwar, the head of Hamas, is, and it won't tell Israel unless Israel does what it wants. It has evidence of where the tunnels from which kids are dying. It won't share it with Israel unless Israel does what it says. It is truly despicable and truly disgusting, the turn that the Biden administration has made over the last month, but is probably under the table had from the beginning. And it's not like this is going to help them. I saw a poll in Michigan among Arabs, and they're going for Trump like 65-35 or 70. So Arabs in Michigan think that Trump is going to be more anti-Israel than Biden. And I don't know that they're wrong. I don't know that they're wrong once he gets in. But that is scary. That is scary. Arab voters in Michigan think Trump is going to be worse on Israel than worse on Israel, or less friendly to Israel than Biden. I mean, so they're going to vote for Trump over Biden. We'll see if that plays out in the election, but that's quite a feat if that's true. All right, I can't believe U.S. is withholding intelligence on whereabouts of Sinwar and tunnels. If they are, then this administration is even more pathetic and disgusting than I thought it was, which is always possible, of course. Finally, well, maybe not finally, but the UN has just come out with new numbers about how many children and how many women are being killed in Gaza, or at least estimates, because nobody knows. And shockingly and unsurprisingly, though, they have revised all their numbers downwards. So they pretty much accept the total number. About 35,000 people have died in Gaza, although nobody knows what that number really is, and that number is probably exaggerated. But they have dramatically lowered the number of women and children to well below 50% of that number, with the rest being men. And, men, they're not qualifying whether they're men of Hamas age or not. But the reality is that Israel claims to have killed at least 15,000 Hamas fighters. I don't know if that's right or not, but it makes sense to me. People affiliated with Hamas in one way or the other. Of the 35, that leaves 20 who are not, many of them men who are not Hamas, some who are women and children. I mean, the tally of women and children is high, but it's nowhere near what they've, what the Palestinians have been claiming and what the UN has been claiming, and now the UN has revised those numbers. Interestingly enough, or maybe not surprising, I haven't seen a single mainstream media cover that. It doesn't appear anywhere. The fact that the UN revised the number downward. They're not interested. They'll continue to cite the same old numbers that they did before. I will say that this war in Gaza has the lowest ratio of collateral damage in the history of urban warfare. Israel has done, has killed fewer civilians than any army ever has in an urban warfare context. So all these numbers, they really don't know what they actually are doing. All right, let's see. What else did I want to say about this? Yeah, one last thing about the Israel thing, although this is all deserving of a much bigger, much longer show. And that is, Biden administration keeps saying Israel doesn't have a plan for what happens the day after plan. How can Israel have a day after plan? I mean, the day after plan for Israel is no Hamas. Once there's no Hamas, we can talk to the Saudis, we can talk to the Americans, we can talk to the Palestinian Authority, we can talk to a bunch of different people about a plan. But did America have a day after plan for Japan? No. Germany? No. Did it have a day after plan for Iraq? Obviously not. Did it have a day after plan for Afghanistan? Well, of course not. Did Biden have a day after plan or the day before plan for evacuating from Afghanistan? Of course not. I mean, the hypocrisy of what Biden and the Biden administration is just unbelievable. And it's worse than hypocrisy. The sheer immorality of it all. And it's setting Israel up on standards where they have to fail, and there's no alternative but to fail, is despicable and disgusting. Shame on them. All right, a few quick ones. Putin today fired his defense secretary. The same defense secretary Prigozhin wanted fired, has finally been fired. Now, he hasn't been fired. He's been booted up to, in a sense, be the chairman of the National Security Council, but it's considered a firing. But what's really interesting about this move, and I haven't seen anybody with a good explanation for it, and I don't have a good explanation for it, is that Putin has, instead of him, replaced him with a Keynesian economist. So we now have a leading Russian Keynesian economist who is now the defense minister of Russia. What exactly does a Keynesian economist bring to the analysis of war, other than we need more money? Is beyond me. Why an economist? Nobody can really say. Maybe because Putin's running everything and he didn't want somebody with military experience in between. I don't know. But it seems weird. The guy who ran the National Security Council had been doing that since 2008. Long-time Putin ally. Not clear where he's going. Maybe he was kicked up even further. I don't know. Of course, the defense secretary is a huge-time Putin ally. So shake up at the Kremlin. Nobody really knows exactly what it means. Maybe in the days to come we'll have better understanding of it. Here's something nobody knows what it means either. Today, a guy, a Reddit personality who used to have a YouTube channel as well, called Roaring Kitty, showed up on, I guess, Reddit, for the first time since June of 2021. He showed up and he put up a little photo of himself leaning into a computer. That's all that was right. As a consequence of that, Roaring Kitty was behind the meme stock phenomena of January 2021, where GameStop shares went through the roof. As a consequence of Roaring Kitty showing up this morning, GameStop shares went up. At some point, they were up over 100% in one day, 110%, all because Roaring Kitty showed his, face, picture, something, we don't know. A number of other meme stocks shot up just because of his appearance. This is pretty crazy. This shows that there's certain parts of the financial markets that literally make no sense, where valuations and efficiency or actual value have departed dramatically. And it really is not healthy and not good for the marketplace. I mean, there's a whole thing we could do on meme stocks. I did it in the past. I probably will do it in the future. Analyzing this phenomena and its broader economic and cultural significance, because I think it does have a significant cultural significance. But I just wanted to point it out today. If you have GameStop shares, this is not investment advice, but I would sell. Yep. No, don't want to do that. Yeah, talk about investment. On this weekend, an investment legend passed away. One of the true great financiers of the late 20th, early 20th, and early 21st century, and that's Gene Simmons. You probably never heard of him, but his Renaissance Technologies was a pioneer in the hedge fund business, pioneer in algorithmic trading, in computer-based trading. Gene Simmons had a PhD in math and was the first one to deploy these kind of models, statistical models, to trade, to find opportunities in the market, to trade on very small movements, very small gains on every trade. But if you multiply it over a huge amount, it turns out to a lot of money. He generated between 1988 and 2018, so that period of 30 years, he averaged annual returns of 66%. That is phenomenal. That is puts him up there with people like Warren Buffett and to some extent George Soros, or at least a period in George Soros's career. He was one of the real pioneers. He was not an arbitrager. One of the real pioneers. Today, there are a lot of firms that do this. Today, there are a lot of firms that try to do this. But I met him. I actually met him once at a fundraising dinner. We were at the same table. And somebody who really changed the business and had a huge impact. And from everybody that I know who knew him, a really nice guy, and again, made his investors and made himself a lot of money. His net worth is estimated to be somewhere around $31 billion. That his net worth, right? Which suggests something about the kind of wealth he created for the people whose money he traded. All right. That is the news for today. A little short because we've got a bunch of questions and because it's a short show today. So, all right, let's see. We've got a couple of, I think we got a $50 sticker. Yeah, Clay D. Thank you, Clay, for the $50 sticker. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you guys for the stickers. Really appreciate the support. Okay, let's do Michael for $50. How are intellectuals so successful at smuggling in anti-happiness and anti-reason thinking among so many people? It's not like they explicitly tell you to be happy and not to think, and not to think, to be unhappy. Not to be happy and not to think. Everything is implicit and backhanded. Well, but look, yes, but your starting point is different. The starting point is the idea to think, and the idea is that you can and should and morally should pursue happiness. That is the achievement. The default is not to think and be anti-happiness, because the default is Christianity. In a sense, we live in a culture where the default is Christianity. And if the default is Christianity, because it's been around for 2,000 years, and everybody's raised on it one way or another, and it's been secularized by a variety of philosophers and intellectuals and thinkers and educators and teachers, then, if we don't tell people anything, then they just absorb what's in the culture already, which is kind of basically a Christian attitude, original sin. You can't find happiness in this world. It's only in the afterworld. Don't think, because, truth doesn't come from thinking. It comes from faith, and it comes from feelings. And that's the starting base. And that's the starting base because intellectuals have taken that Christianity, which has been there again for 2,000 years. And you could ask, how did Christianity get established as the dominant? But that's a different question. But once it became dominant, the attacks on Christianity from the Enlightenment and from the Renaissance and so on were attacks against it. We're trying to get people to think about happiness. We're trying to get people to think for themselves, because that's where the base was. And we're still fighting that same battle. We're still fighting against the fundamental base assumptions of a Christian world. So it's not like everybody's happy, everybody's pro-reason, everybody wants to think, everybody's excited about thinking, everybody's out there to go for happiness, and then come these philosophers and say, no, don't do that, or smuggle the ideas in. No, it's to some extent, maybe you could argue it's a little bit in America, but even in America, there was too much of kind of the Christian duty ethics and the Christian attitude towards happiness, and even the Protestant attitude towards work as a duty, not as something that brings you joy and happiness. Watch the Seinfeld address. He says there, he says it much better than I do. He says there, people say, nobody ever said before they died, oh, I wish I'd spend more time in the office. I wish I'd worked more. And Seinfeld's response to that is, why not? I'm happy with the amount of work I've done, and I've done a lot. And maybe I could do more. It's great. I love my work. I enjoy it. Why not? Before your deathbed say, yeah, I could have worked more. I should have worked more. That was fun. I wish I'd had more fun at work. Why not? And I thought that was brilliant, right? Seinfeld said, nothing about family. Gets a thumbs up for me. Work and love. Work and love. And he talks about love in broad terms. It's really work and value. Work and value. And he was really good. Anyway, so even in American society, which was the closest to think and pursue happiness, there was this underlying Christian philosophy, which is the opposite of that, which then the intellectuals could mine and keep bringing that to the surface and prevent people from embracing in totality the idea of thinking and pursuit of happiness. All right. Michael, also $50. Thank you, Michael. And Coulter made an interesting point of Vivek podcast that Catholics in America become Protestant. This idea of being poor, bringing you closer to God and salvation, is a Catholic thing. The Calvinist Protestants' work ethic rejected all that. I don't know. Certainly the Catholic Church kept telling Catholics that they shouldn't be poor, and every time a sect would spin off and act out poverty and live up to poverty brings you closer to heaven, the Catholic Church would suppress them and oppress them. And of course, the popes and the cardinals didn't exactly, weren't models to emulate when it comes to, poverty brings you closer to God. The Calvinist Protestant work ethic did not reject that idea. It rejects it. It wasn't about achieving wealth. Partially, the Calvinists believe that you're destined to heaven or to hell no matter what you do. No matter what you do, you're already predestined. Before you're born, God knows if you're going to heaven or hell. So what the hell? So you might as well just enjoy your life on this earth. You might as well work hard and gain some wealth. And it's not a healthy attitude towards work. Or you should build up out of a sense of duties. You can leave it all to the church, or build up out of a sense of duty so you can make your fellow man, whatever. There's nothing in it that is healthy. The Protestant work ethic is not a healthy attitude towards work. It's an attitude towards either this world is tainted, and an attitude towards work as a duty rather than work as something you should really enjoy and make the most of and challenge yourself and pursue as a career, because it's your real calling in life. And I'm not sure what Catholics becoming Protestants really means, in what sense she meant that. I'll have to watch that interview where she insults Vivek right off the bat. So it's got to be interesting. All right, Mary Aline, I really like John Allison's book, The Financial Crisis and the Free Market Cure. Yeah, it was very good. BB&T was forced to take the government dollars to help hide which banks were actually struggling. If you got the audiobook, the reader has a magnificent voice. I never got the audiobook, but I read the book, and of course I did a course on the financial crisis. So John and I agree to a large extent on the causes and what happened during the financial crisis, and it was fine. I also made a documentary about the financial crisis that unfortunately never really took off, but is available. I don't know. I need to check if it's available on YouTube. But John Allison appears in that documentary, as do others like this chairman of Wells Fargo and a lot of other CEOs and economists. And it's too bad the documentary wasn't a success, because the mythology of what actually happened during the financial crisis won out rather than the truth. A truth which I think John, in his book, presents. You can find John Allison's The Financial Crisis and Free Market Cure on Amazon. I highly recommend it. Friend Harper, seems to me that there is an intimidating barrier to embrace honesty as a principle, like in objectivism. That barrier is making peace with the past and correcting previous dishonesties. Previous dishonesties too awful to confront. Well, I mean, it's not a real barrier. It's maybe a psychological barrier, but it's not a real barrier. It's a barrier that can be overcome, just like any bad emotion is a barrier that needs to be overcome, because that's what life requires. It requires you to pursue your happiness by using reason, which means sometimes overcoming emotions which are holding you back. So it might be a small barrier, but and it could be psychologically very, very, very difficult to address past dishonesty. But it's just like everything else. It needs to be done. It needs to be done. You need to handle your emotions. And if you don't, you will suffer the consequence the rest of your life. In that sense, the damage is much greater not to deal with them than dealing with them. Michael, they're not after money. They can print that out of thin air. What they're after is your soul. Yes, I think that's what people in power want. They want your soul. They want to control you. They want. It's what Chewy is after. It's power, not money, but power. Now, they don't mind the money. I mean, they can't really print it for themselves, but what they really want is power, and power over your soul is the right terminology. Michael says, why did Atlas Shrugged movies suck so bad, and how far back did it set our movement? Why did they suck so bad? Because they were badly made. I don't know, because there was no talent was involved in the creation of those movies. No script writing talent, no directing talent, and no acting talent. It was all mediocre and below, and you could tell that. It wasn't lack of money, it was lack of talent. And how far back did it set our movement? I don't know. I think somewhat, because if people see that, They go, this is what the big deal is. This is what all the brouhaha is about. Come on, give me a break. This is amateurish. Amateurish. Right. You could make, there are lots of ways in which you could make a great Atlas Shrugged movie. It wouldn't be the book, but it would be a great Atlas Shrugged movie. Those movies didn't even come close. Didn't even come close. Michael says, doesn't seem like Ayn Rand wrote much about Hitler and the Nazis despite being intellectually active during the war. That is true. I mean, she viewed as the long-term threat, she viewed communism, partially because communism is what survived, and partially because she saw the intellectual fascination with communism. Would have been interesting to have her thoughts post the collapse of the Berlin Wall and all the way to today. But no, she did not write a lot about fascism and particularly about Hitler. And partially it's because that was so obviously evil, so obviously bad. It was so obvious that they were bad guys. Everybody agreed that they were the bad guys. There was no question about it. That she didn't have to spend a lot of intellectual resources doing that, whereas so much of the world thought the Soviets were the good guys. And then, of course, she did collaborate with Leonard Peikoff on Leonard Peikoff's Ominous Parallels, which is all about the Nazis. So you could say she wrote a lot about the Nazis, given what Leonard did during the 1970s in writing the Ominous Parallels, which she edited and gave him a lot of feedback on. Michael always says, are some things hardwired into our brains deeper than the rational level? Well, what do you mean? It depends what you mean by some things. What are things? What things? I don't know what things are. Certainly, you have certain inclinations. You have certain, maybe even abilities that are hardwired. But I don't. No ideas. No ideas are hardwired. So, short of ideas, absolutely, there might be things that are hardwired into your brain. But I don't know how much impact, and they have some impact on us. How much? But in order to do this properly, you would really have to have a really clear, really clear understanding of what things are, what is hardwired, how do they impact it, and to what extent, how does that interact with your rational level, with reason? And I haven't seen anybody who has a real understanding of that. Somebody who combines an understanding of the neuroscience, the evolutionary issues, and a proper epistemological understanding. That combination would be very powerful if somebody developed that. Jacob says, I'm calling in Dems dumping Biden at, I'm calling it, he says. Dems dumping Biden at convention. Ticket will be President Kamala Harris, VP Michelle Obama, will be Barack's fourth term. Okay. Jacob, we'll talk after the convention. I think that would be an improvement. I think that would be an improvement for Democrats over Biden. Biden's lost. So, he's clueless. And I think the world, everybody in America knows it. And the Democrats have to do something if they want any hopes of beating Trump. They need to get rid of Biden, and whether that's the ticket or if it brings in Gavin Newsom or they bring in somebody else, who knows? But and maybe they do it in the convention, and maybe they don't. It's going to be pretty hopeless if they keep Biden. He can't keep up. Michael says, is there any way Israel can avoid invading southern Lebanon? I hope not. I hope not. I mean, they can avoid it by kicking it down the road and kicking the can down the road and evading. They can just not do it. Come to some kind of ceasefire agreement with UN inspectors, which they already have and has worked, has done nothing. But they can evade and they can kick the can down the road again. Jason, did you see Bill Maher on CBS Sunday Morning give the advice, don't be tribal? No, I didn't see that. But Bill Maher's done some good things, so good for him. and don't be tribal is important advice. I'm not sure he or any of them understand what it actually means and what the alternative is and how you implement the alternative. Not easy. All right. Eric says, just arrived in San Juan. Welcome. We'll be in Fajardo. What are the most to-do things in PER? Doing bioluminescent lake tonight. Lots and lots and lots and lots of mosquito stuff. That bioluminescent, tons of mosquitoes. And we have a dengue fever epidemic here. You do not want to get dengue fever. So smother yourself with anti-mosquito repellent, thick layer, if you're going out there. But there's the rainforest, there's Old San Juan, and what else is there to see? There's the beaches. The weather, at least in the mornings, is quite nice. You can, if you go all the way out to the other side of the island, Rincon is really pretty. There's a good art museum in Ponce, but the best pieces are out on loan, so I wouldn't go now. If you come after January 2025, the Ponce Museum is definitely worth visiting. There's some beautiful caves and stone structures, what do you call them? Formations. Near Arecibo, on the way to Rincon, on the north side of the island. And San Juan has great restaurants and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean it's a fun place. It's not the best season to be visiting. It's pretty wet, but hopefully you have decent weather, and hopefully you can make it a marmalade. Absolutely. Daniel says, to what extent does feminism have a rational view of independence? It mostly seems defined by a negative, not dependent on men, but that leaves open other things one could be dependent on. Yes, I mean, I don't think feminism ever had a good view of independence. I think feminism it has deteriorated from first wave or second wave feminists all the way to whatever wave it is now. They become more tribal, they become more leftist, more determinist, more anti-men, and less dependent. But they've never had a proper view of independence and of reason. Reason never played a big role. And in that sense, they didn't take Rand. No, none of them read Rand, or really, with except of Camille Pigalier or something like that, her name is, who did read Ayn Rand and liked certain things about Rand. Ayn Rand didn't like feminists exactly because of that, because the feminism movement, because it was not a pro-reason, pro-individual independence movement, but had tribal and collectivistic elements. Camille Paglia, that's right, Camille Paglia. All right, last question, quickly. Alexis just snuck one in. What do you make of Emmanuel Macron's U-turn on Ukraine? U-turn in the sense that now he wants to send troops in, or now he wants to cuddle up to... I mean, I don't know. I think Macron is trying to differentiate himself, trying to position himself as a leader of Europe in some way, at the cutting edge of Europe. He's trying to differentiate himself from the Germans, but he's also trying to differentiate himself from kind of his opposition within France. He's trying to position himself as different, as very pro-Europe and the importance of Europe, versus particularly her name escapes me, but the far-right candidate on in France. He's trying to be this independent, smart, different thinker, right? So I don't know how that works. He started out the war in Ukraine being very, very friendly towards the Russians, and now he's the most anti-Russian, pro-Ukraine of all the European leaders, even almost more so than Poland. And it's hard to tell exactly what his game is, but the only thing I can think of is he's really trying to be a leader of Europe. He's really trying to differentiate himself. I don't think there's any principle there. I don't think Macron is a principled guy. But he's probably the best France could hope for in the current context. He's reasonable. He's kind of a reasonable centrist. He's not, he's made some actual market reforms that I'm not sure anybody else would have had the courage to make. And he's managed to do it. All right, Mary Eileen corrects me. It's Camille Paglia. The G is silent. It's Paglia, but the G is silent. Camille Paglia. Alexa says the bar is low in France. Yes, it's very low in France, given who they have. You can have a communist, you can have a fascist, or you can have Macron. Wow, Macron looks so good right now. All right, everybody, I have to run. I'm teaching a class in like 3 minutes. Thank you. Don't forget, if you're interested in the public speaking seminar, to go to my website and sign up under workshop, yaronbrookshow.com. That's the website. If you're interested in signing up for the Peterson course, you can go to Peterson Academy/Brook. I think it's petersonacademy.com/Brook. And you can sign up to be a live member of the audience for my class on finance. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, don't forget, buy Leonard Peikoff's new book, Why Act on Principle. Why Act on Principle? It's a book of essays by Leonard Peikoff. Go get it on Amazon. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.